All right, what if the world was just made of Jello? Not specifically Minecraft, but like what if the real one was? I think it has like a lot of ramifications that people wouldn't think about. Having an atmosphere, one of them. You just wouldn't have an atmosphere anymore because all of the trees would just be jello and nothing would be pulling the atmosphere in. I think that cars would sink, not necessarily perfectly vertically, but like I don't think they would stay on top anymore if they weren't turned to jello because jello's a lot less like structurally sound than roads and stuff. So I built this car here to demonstrate that. All of the caves would also turn to jello, meaning that there would just be pockets of jello. And when you have pockets of jello, jello is less structurally sound than stone and bedrock, so it would pretty much all fall down in on itself and collapse. That would at least cause sinkholes and craters if the entire Earth didn't shrink itself. Because as you can see here in Minecraft, even just things fall down when they're not supported enough, which is the concrete pattern. I think that personally some of the most well-surviving creatures would be like worms and silverfish, like small things that could easily do that. And as you can see here, this is probably how things would move around in Jello. They would just kind of dig tunnels through different places and such. Dig tunnels. And also, Jello is like a food source, so you can just live on that because it's packed with energy. I'm not sure how an ecosystem would survive with it, but it would. And then you'd get to people. I People would also probably sink into the jello because there's nothing stopping you from. And also, the entire world would probably shrink because of how jello is less dense than everything else. So the entire world would just kind of sink in on itself. Like the jello world on the right that I built was smaller than the normal one on the left. Also, this is not at all the most accurate version of the Earth. I just kind of threw something together with World Edit. But if the entire planet was made of jello, then it would kind of implode in on itself because jello is not nearly as solid as rock and stone and stuff. So caves would collapse and everything would collapse, which would mean that it would shrink. And I think actually the density of the jello would get increased at the core, maybe even molten at the core, because it's being crushed by everything else. And what would dense jello even taste like? Is it just like a gummy worm or a gummy bear? I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know, but I'm not sure anything good would come from the world being jello. I'm sure a lot of people would say that they would kind of just like eat the jello, but I don't think you can do that. I think you would just plummet into the jello. Uh and it's not a stable food source anyway, so you can't really get nutrition from it. I'm sure there are some nutritious jellos, but I wouldn't say you could survive off jello alone. So I think honestly it would be a catastrophe if the world was suddenly turned to jello. But if it had always been jello, then probably, like I said, worms and insects and stuff like that would probably be supreme and rule over everything. Not specifically rule, but like they would be some of the prime species to exist.